Good morning, everybody, or wherever you happen to be, whatever time of day it is. So we're sort of in the middle of chapter 5 here in Ma'amar Hechaltzu, and we discussed yesterday primarily the notion of Chokhmah, that emanation of Hashem, that expression of divine creative energy, and that's specifically an energy which is inclusive, which is a force for unity, which influence all other emanations of divine expression. And it's always important to bear in mind, especially for those who haven't been learning with me the past few years or aren't exposed to this system of Chabad Chassidut, to bear in mind the parallelism between the process by which we think, feel, and express outwardly through thought, speech, and action, and the divine act of creation. See, these are these sort of parallel processes. It is actually incredibly powerful, because by understanding how we function, we actually can understand how God creates, right? That's the whole concept here, because we're sort of operating in parallel kind of processes for a good reason, because we're made with Tselem Elohim, we're made in God's image. And the way that we can understand the divine creation is parallel to the way we ourselves create or express ourselves. After all, what is creation? It's Hashem expressing itself. Hashem goes to Real Americana High School as an 11th grade English class, and he's learning how to express himself through compositions. That's the creation of the world. Okay? So just like we express ourselves in a certain process in which there's kind of an amorphous insight, and then you sort of think about it and put it on paper, try to dissect it, analyze it. Who could be calling me at this time? Oh, that's weird. My daughter calling me from Israel? Maybe she just wants to join in on the broadcast. Okay, let me see if I can. Everybody excuse me who's watching this 100 years from now. I wondered what kind of crazy dude this is. I'm trying to be a good father here. I'm going to invite my daughter here. Miriam. Here, like this. I don't know what she wants.
Must be like 4 p.m. there or something.
Oh, it's like this. Hang on a second. Miriam.
Oh, yeah.
Miriam Smith. The Jewish name is that Smith.
Yeah, 423.
Okay, fine. So so we have the sort of amorphous insight. You kind of it's hard to like get your hands on it, but then you get your hands on it, that's called Binah. So first level is Chokhmah, second level is Binah. And then Dot is you take the idea and integrate it, get used to it, and then it can spawn emotions of all the different forms of emotions, and then that can all be expressed through speech, through action, etc. Okay, so that same process is how God creates the world, and those are the Sfirot. So the Sfirot Chokhmah is that kind of amorphous, undefined, undifferentiated, right? That's why it's a kind of unifying factor, because it's pre-defined, pre-differentiated. Okay. So now we're on chapter 5, and we're in the Hebrew text, where it's about 6 lines from the bottom. The first word line is Vahit Kalalut. Then there's a period. Then it says Ve'en ze soter. And in the English text in chapter whatever, you'll find it. Okay. Ve'en ze soter lamashe b'makom acher mevuar dereshit ha'itchalkut hi b'chinat hamochin. This doesn't contradict. See, what did we just say? We said that Chokhmah is non-divisive, non-dividing into parts. The only problem, he says, that in many other places we say that, in fact, the dividing up into things. Remember we talked about yesterday when I sort of posed the question, when you make Havdalah, right, separating between Shabbat and the rest of the week, and you say that in the Amidah, in the prayer Amidah on Saturday night, you say, God, Hamadu and Kodesh L'Chol, that you make separations, distinctions, that you include that in the blessing of the Shemona Esrei, which talks about your brain, right? The fourth blessing of the Amidah. Why do you put it there? Because that's what using your brain means. It means to make distinctions. That's what thinking is about, making distinctions. Now, we just said that Chokhmah is not making distinctions. So that's the contradiction. So he says, well, it doesn't really contradict, it just looks like it. How so? And we're going to explain why. He says the following, K'mosh katuv b'Torah or, sof di'var v'kibel Yehudim b'inyan v'yichan Yisrael kulam ki'ish echad. So he actually alludes to interesting an analysis by the founder of Chabad, Chassidut Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Ladi, in an essay where he explains what Purim is all about. This is nothing but Purim. Like, wow, all of a sudden there's this reference to Purim. Now he's going to now explain the idea. Shezeu dafka mitzad haratzon hapashut shelamala me'etam v'dat ki b'mochin yesh hitchalkut. That when we talk about non-differentiation, I have to warn you right now. Right now, we're going to accentuate the problem. We're not getting to the answer yet. The problem's got to become more severe. It's going to become more severe when people sleep tonight, unless we solve it. So that which goes beyond differentiation, we see in Kabbalistic writings, the writing of the Alter Rebbe, is only on the level of Ratzon Pashut, simple will. You see, if you look at charts of the Sfirot, the divine emanations, so sometimes you'll see that Chokhmah is the first one, right? Chokhmah, Bina, Dat, etc. But if you look at other ways that the Sfirot are organized, the high Sfirah is not Chokhmah.
No, it isn't. It's Keter.
It's Keter. Very good. We have a resident Kabbalist here, Madonna Elisheva. So the Keter is the highest. Keter in Hebrew means crown. Okay?
Crown.
Crown. Now, crown, so another term for that is Ratzon in Hebrew. It's actually, this is amazing because tonight in our class that we on Wednesday nights, we're all talking about Ratzon, will. Okay? See, will is above intellect. You know, you want something, it's not cerebral. Right? So, like, for instance, when we talk about, remember that when we talk about the divine Sfirot, we're talking about the process by which God created the world. See, so it's a big mistake, even though we want to answer the question, why did God create the world?
To give.
Right? So, and yes, indeed. But you realize that even though that's a very attractive answer, and it's a famous answer, the Ramchal talks a lot about that, the truth of the matter is, and Chabad Chassidut, you see, it's interesting, the idea of, because God wanted to give of himself, as far as I know, and please someone correct me, either here or over the internet, you don't find that theme per se so stressed in Chabad Chassidut. It's in the Ramchal. In Chabad Chassidut, you'll see that, you see, once you talk about God wanted to be able to express his attribute of goodness. So in order to be able to express that attribute of goodness, you have to have an object. You have to have a recipient.
Yeah.
In Chabad Chassidut, you don't see that. What you see is that the primal, original impulse to create comes from Ratzon, will. You see, if I talk about, look, I got this attribute I want to express, and I can't express unless I got someone to express it to, right? Goodness. I want to bestow goodness. So I can't be good unless I give off goodness. You realize that that's an intellectual concept. That's an idea. So Chabad Chassidut stresses, no. That's already too intellectual, too concrete. At the end of the day, the only thing you really talk about is a higher level, a deeper level, a more essential level, which in the Kabbalah is called Keter, crown, or ratzon, will. So to put it in different words, you know why God created the world? Because he wanted to.
To exercise his will.
He wanted to. Okay? He wanted to. Once you try to put it into rational, intellectual, explanatory terms, you're reducing it to forms which make it easier for us to grasp to, but it doesn't capture the divine inexplicability.
And that's
If I can make up such a
that's
word.
why it boils down to
It's
people.
pure will.
We do things
Ratzon.
because we want to.
Want to.
Just for clarification.
Yeah.
Is Ratzon related to the next higher level Sefirot of Chachma, like Malchut
Yes.
from the lower one?
Well, that's you're
that's-
pointing out something so fascinating.
You have to be related.
Yeah, beautiful. You see, Ratzon, will, or Keter, crown, same thing. Okay, this kind of just I want to. God wanted to. All right. So what Larry's pointing out is there's something interesting. I think someone said this just a few moments ago. Keter, crown, sounds a lot. Didn't someone say royalty?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
or-
Yeah,
Larry.
right.
I knew somebody said that. You plead guilty. So there is such a divine attribute in the way that Kabbalah understands the divine emanations or divine expressions. It's the lowest one. That's called Malchut. Malchut means kingship or royalty, whatever you want to say. So so Larry points out the interesting phenomenon or pattern that the real highest sphira of Keter, crown, ratzon, will, is linked to the very lowest sphira, malchut, kingship. Okay? The highest and the lowest are always bound to each other. And when the divine expression flows through the different worlds, right, you have these worlds, and in each one of those worlds are all the 10 sphirot. Okay? All the sphirot in each world. So what happens is, in one world, what's the lowest sphira? Malchut, kingship. And when that flows in the next world, what is the first level it flows into? Keter, the highest. So the highest and the lowest are always bound into each other. That's also the meaning of the expression sof maaseh, that which is last indeed is first in thought. That's like Shabbat. We say it in L'chadodi, the prayer L'chadodi on Friday nights. That sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila, that which was last indeed. What was the last thing God created? Shabbos, Shabbat. But because it was the last to manifest itself, but in fact it's really the point of existence. And as a matter of fact, that's not an arbitrary example. You know what the purpose of Shabbat is? To demonstrate God's malchut, his sovereignty. Because what is it? That during the 6 days, when we're working and busy and trying to make a living and changing the world and fixing our car and the plumbing and the toilet, changing the toilet over there, all those things, getting our meniscus operated on. So, it gives us the feeling of, guess what? We are powerful. Look what we can do. We can change a toilet. That's amazing. It's not arbitrary. Don't think I'm like something's wrong with my brain. Happening, my buddy Zev over here actually changed it. He's good. He has hands. That's amazing. It was the last time I met somebody with hands. So, in any case, so you get the sense that, whoa, I have power. I have malchut, right? I can manipulate the world. So what do? Every 7 days, you stop manipulating the world and to remind yourself that Hashem is really sovereign. So even though Shabbat is created last, right? It's actually first. It is our ability to recenter ourselves, to remind ourselves of the sovereignty of God, that ultimately all existence is an expression of the divine ratzon, the divine will. So the highest sphira and the lowest sphira are linked to each other, and that was a very good point, Larry. Okay, so, but this leaves us with a problem. Because if keter, ratzon, will, kingship, right, pure will, no explanations, pure will, is the highest. So then the very next step after keter is chabad, right? Chochmah bina v'dat. It's the intellectual attributes. So in these Kabbalistic writings say that differentiation begins with the intellectual attributes. That only in ratzon, keter, right, kingship, will, is the undifferentiation. But wait a second, we just got through saying for the past couple of days that in fact chokhmah, which is the beginning of the intellectual attributes, is the part of divine expression which is undifferentiated. It's the source of unity, right, and utter sameness. No distinctions. But you see in Kabbalistic sources it says the opposite. It says ratzon. Only when you're in the previous step up, the ratzon, is it pure undifferentiated. So how do we deal with that? Okay, so we're going to keep going. Ki b'mochin yesh hitchalkut she'ein deotein shavot. This is all an expression of the problem right now. We're not getting the answer yet. So our sages tell us that no two people's brains are the same. No people's mindsets, the way they see the world, is the same. Why? Because brains' mindset is differentiation. Okay, it's an expression of when we get to the level of intellect, everything is disunified. Okay? Everyone is differentiated from each other, divided on the level of brain. But I'm still confused because I thought that brain, chokhmah, is the undifferentiated part. See, this is all, we're not in the answer yet. This is all accentuating the question. The whole idea of using intellect is to limit, differentiate, analyze, right? All those things have to do with making distinctions. By doing those things, differentiation, analysis, discernment, that's all the intellectual endeavor. He called tfisa hu yodesh to face. Okay, let's just skip a little. Okay, we're going to the next page on the top. Last word on the first line. Im kain hare hamochin hein b'vchinat hitchalkut dafka. So you see from this, to summarize, that the intellectual endeavor is differentiation, not unity. But I thought we said chokhmah, which is Moshe's attribute, is the idea of unity. That's why it's the opposite of midyat. Mm-hmm. So here's the answer. When we talk about intellect as being the power of discernment, the differentiation of partition and all those things, that's when we're talking about the attribute of bina. Bina. Remember, the intellectual process has parts to it. There's chokhmah, bina, and dat. So when you see all those Kabbalistic sources that talk about intellect as being a force for differentiation, they're talking about the attribute of bina. Because that's what bina is. Bina is saying, I'm going to take this amorphous idea and I'm going to grab onto it and I'm going to analyze it and differentiate it, right, and dissect it. That's the process called bina. But chokhmah, which is the point we've been making, is not that. When all those sources talk about intellect being a process of differentiation, they were talking about starting in bina, but the step before that, chokhmah, is not like that. Chokhmah is the pre-intellect intellect, if you could imagine such a thing. It's the pre-intellect intellect. It's the grasping of something in a way when you're not grasping it. Because from our point of view, right, I used to have a teacher in Gemara, in Yeshiva, and he used to say, if you can't explain it, you don't understand it. He used to say that a lot. You see, what he's saying is if you can't tell me in words, that means you're not really grasping it. You don't hold on to it. You know, if you can't, you know, some people say, "Oh, Rabbi, I understand. I just can't explain it to you." You know, you say, if you can't explain it, you don't understand it. Okay, so, but he's wrong. Oops. Well, he was right in a certain sense. Right on the level of Binah, you don't understand it because it hasn't filtered down into a way that you can put it into words. But you can understand it. It's just not the way we normally think of the word understand on the level of Chokhmah. The irony is you understand it so well, you can't put it into words because, as we said many times, words are, in a sense, an artificial straitjacket. You know, like if I tell you, write a poem describing what it's like to eat delicious ice cream. Well, that's a pale imitation of the real experience. The real experience is the real experience. So Chokhmah is like the real thing itself. Once you try to put it into words, so now it's more tangible, I can share it with you. But I've lost the reality of it. Even though Chokhmah is part of the intellectual process, but it hasn't been brought down into the level of the way we normally think of intellect. It's still the level of kind of this amorphous, universal, general idea, which is actually more the truth, but less tangible and graspable. למעלה בבחינת התחלקות לפרטים, כי ידוע מבואר במקום אחר ועוד זאת, בבחינת התחלקות הזאת דחוכמה ושכל הרי בתכליתה היא התקלות דווקא, כי ידוע שיש שני מיני התחלקות. Now, he's going to go on to another really important idea, but I think we're going to have to pause here. Now, just a very important announcement. So, as I'm sure you know, there's a funeral tomorrow. There is a possibility, I'll let you know, please check your emails, because of it's like sort of spread over time, the funeral. So I might even go in tonight because it's at 10 a.m. So if I go in tonight, obviously I won't be here tomorrow. So please check your emails about whether or not class will be tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.